To install this unit, you will need the proper tools. These will include a pair of wire cutters that can strip wires, a crimping tool, assorted screwdrivers, a soldering iron, pliers or wrenches, perhaps a socket set, some electrical tape, and an electric drill with a 1/4 inch and 5/16 inch drill bits. Most importantly, you will need an electronic test meter or multimeter. First, we will need to remove this lower dash panel by either a few screws or bolts to get to the vehicle's wiring under the dash. Underneath the steering column is where you will find all of the ignition wires of your vehicle. These wires, when connected properly, will start your engine and allow accessories such as the heater and air conditioner to operate. While searching for these wires, if you see any bright yellow harnesses or wires marked in such a way as to alert you of their presence, you must completely avoid them. These are the airbag wires and must not be tampered with or unplugged unless you're instructed to do so. Ignoring this warning could lead to accidental deployment, which could injure you or damage the airbag system. The first wire we will connect is the ground wire. You will need to crimp the ring terminal onto the bare end of the black ground wire first. Then, to complete this connection, use an existing screw or make your own connection by drilling into the chassis of the vehicle using a self-tapping screw. The next step is to run the required wires through the firewall. The wires that may need to go through the firewall are the pink power wire, the green tack wire, and the purple hood pin switch wire. To go through the firewall, find an accessible rubber grommet. Using a long screwdriver or similar device, poke a hole through the grommet from the engine compartment into the interior of the vehicle. Tape the wires together and attach them to the screwdriver. Pull the screwdriver through and run the wires from the interior of the vehicle out into the engine compartment. Ensure that the wires do not catch on any sharp metal edges as you run them through the firewall. As you run the wires around the engine compartment, make sure that you keep the wires away from hot surfaces and moving parts. The pink power wire must be connected to the positive battery post of the vehicle. Failure to do so may result in undesired operation and damage to the electrical system of the vehicle. Remove the battery post and connect the short piece of pink wire with the ring terminal and the fuse holder to the vehicle's positive battery post. Then, reconnect the vehicle's battery wire. Solder the long end of the pink power wire to the short piece of pink wire. Tape the solder connection with enough electrical tape to ensure that there are no exposed areas or frayed wires poking through. You must make the connections to the ignition wires as close to the ignition switch as possible. They should not be made anywhere else in the vehicle. For example, do not connect at the fuse box or under the hood or at the starter motor. Check the blue wiring guide to confirm that you have identified the correct wires. Once you have located the ignition harness, it may be necessary to slit it open. In order for us to identify the proper ignition wires, we will need to turn the key to the start, run, and accessory positions. These are the three positions that you can turn your key, which will operate all of the electronics in your vehicle. All three of these positions are active during normal operation of your vehicle. With your test meter set to read DC voltage, we will measure the voltage of the vehicle's ignition wires and match them to the corresponding key position. First, we will find the ignition 1 wire of the vehicle. This wire is usually responsible for providing both fuel and spark to the engine. This wire will measure 12 volts with the key in the run position and in the start position. That is when the key is turned on and while the engine is cranking. It will measure 0 volts in all other key positions. You should now connect the ignition 1 wire to the dark blue ignition wire of the remote starter. We recommend you either do this by soldering, which will ensure the best connection, or by using the strip, split, and twist method. Using this method, you first use a pair of strippers to make the 2 incisions and then use a razor blade to strip off the insulation. Once the wire is exposed, use a pick to split a hole through the exposed wire. Next, strip off about 1 inch of insulation on the wire that you will be attaching and run it through the hole and twist it around the outside of the vehicle's wire. Once you have finished, you will have a strong, secure connection. Whether you use this method or solder, ensure that all connections are sealed with electrical tape. The next wire we will connect is the ignition 2 wire, which usually measures 12 volts in the run position only. This wire will never have 12 volts in the accessory position. On some 1994 and newer GM vehicles, the vehicle's ignition 2 wire may also have 12 volts in the run and start position, just like the ignition 1 wire did. This wire will never have 12 volts in the accessory position. Once you have correctly identified the ignition 2 wire, connect it to the green ignition 2 wire on the remote starter. The next wire we are going to locate is the accessory wire. On most vehicles, this wire will operate accessory circuits such as the radio, windshield wipers, and power windows. On some vehicles, especially those made by Ford or on late model GM vehicles, this wire is used to power up part of the air conditioning or climate control system. Find a wire with 12 volts in the accessory position and the run position as well. If you are working on a GM vehicle, the accessory wire will tend to be orange and only have 12 volts in the run position. Connect the vehicle's accessory wire to the white accessory wire on the remote starter. The last ignition wire we will connect is the start wire. This wire is responsible for cranking the engine during starting. Find a wire that registers 12 volts in the start position only. This will be a wire that measures 0 volts in all positions except when the key has been turned to the start position and the engine is cranking. Once the key is released from the start position, the voltage will drop back to 0 volts. This is your start wire. Connect the start wire to the remote start's yellow wire. This hood pin switch is a very important safety feature. It will prevent the remote starter from operating if the hood of the vehicle is open. This is a critical component and must be installed in order for the remote starter to function properly. Find a location to mount the hood pin switch that won't interfere with any wires or parts in the engine compartment. The hood pin switch must be pressed down when the hood is closed and up when the hood is open. Many vehicles already have a hole cut out near the front of the hood that the hood pin switch will fit. If you don't, you can drill a 5/16 inch hole for this switch, which has a nut underneath and a wire that plugs in at the bottom. Clear away paint and dirt from the area, then insert the switch and mount it with the nut and star washer provided. Next, crimp the red connector to the violet hood pin wire. Plug the red connector to the bottom of the hood pin switch. Visually check that the hood pin switch is adjusted so that it fully is depressed, no electrical contact, when the hood is closed. Next, we will connect the orange brake wire. When the remote starter is running the vehicle, this wire shuts off the remote starter when you depress it. Using your test meter and having it set to the DC voltage position, probe the brake light switch connector mounted above the brake pedal for a wire that registers 12 volts when the brake pedal is depressed. Connect this wire to the orange brake wire of the remote starter. Connecting the remote starter to either of your headlights or parking lights will give you a visual indication that the vehicle is running remotely. Although it is not a mandatory connection, If you choose to do so, the first step is to turn on your low beam headlights or parking lights. Find a wire that comes off the light switch and is under the dash. Locate the wire that registers 12 volts when the desired lights come on. Connect the yellow-white wire to either the low beam headlight wire or the parking light wire. The next wire is the white-black ignition 3 wire. This is a multi-purpose wire, an optional wire, that only needs to be connected if your blue vehicle wiring guide instructs you to do so. Check your wiring guide to see if this connection applies to your installation. If you use it as an ignition 3 wire, you will need to add a relay. Another option is to have your horn honk before the remote starter starts your vehicle to tell you that the remote starter has received the transmitted signal. If you decide to connect the horn wire, locate the wire that runs down the steering column that measures 12 volts at the rest position and 0 volts whenever the horn is activated. This is your vehicle's horn wire. Connect the blue horn wire of the unit to it. Many of today's vehicles are equipped with a factory alarm. If your vehicle is equipped with one, then you'll use this brown-white wire to automatically disarm the alarm each time you wish to use the remote starter. Check the blue wiring guide to see if this is a necessary connection for your particular installation. Now we will mount the valet switch. Find a location under the dash that is accessible to the driver. Ensure that the panel is not too thick and that there is enough clearance behind the switch for it to be mounted so that the connectors on the back of the switch will not interfere with other controls or touch any metal. Then, drill a hole using a 1/4-inch drill bit. Now mount the switch and plug the valet switch into the white jack located on your module. DesignTech car starters have a patented no-tack feature that monitors the engine and determines the crank output for starting the engine. If you do not have to depress the gas pedal before starting your vehicle, then you will probably not need to connect the green tack wire. This wire checks to see if the engine of the vehicle is running. For most vehicles, use the no-tack method of starting and leave the unit in the factory no-tack setting. Then roll up this wire and secure it with electrical tape. You may decide to hook up this wire later if the vehicle becomes hard to start. If you need to connect the tack wire of your vehicle, your blue wiring sheet will indicate where it is located and what color it is. The installation instructions will explain how to teach the tack rate to the remote starter. Now we are ready to mount the antenna. Correct placement ensures that maximum range is achieved with your unit. Remove the A-pillar trim by carefully pulling it off. Run the antenna up the pillar that is between the windshield and the driver's door, across the top of the windshield under the roof liner so that it comes out vertically behind the rear view mirror, which will block your view of the antenna. The roof liner will hold the antenna in place. Adjust the antenna so that Now let us install the power fuse and set up our unit for remote starting. Install the 30 amp blade fuse into the fuse holder.